Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Lang, and I'm here to spark the philanthropy revolution. The word philanthropy means love of mankind. My show is all about the ways we can revolutionize our fundraising so we can raise more money and do more good. Hey everybody! Happy Wednesday, hump day, right? Welcome to another episode of the Philanthropy Revolution. It's episode number 32. I can't believe we've done 32 of these already. So for those of you who have been joining me, thanks so much. And for those of you who are new, welcome, welcome. My name is Sarah Lang, and my genius zone is fundraising strategy. So I raised over $100 million. I worked with more than 200 nonprofits, but more importantly, I am a super creative, out of the box thinker. So I'm able to help my clients adapt their strategies and their tactics in new creative ways so they can get more money and do more good. So as we head into the fall fundraising season, I thought it was the perfect time to talk about the top 5 challenges that nonprofits are facing today. And more importantly, what to do about them. You know, fall is such a crazy time. Like, we have 5 grant applications due on Friday. No big deal, right? We had a bunch of them due on August 15th. So things are really starting to pick up. So the more we can tweak our systems and our approaches now, the better we're going to do as we head into the holiday giving season and the grant writing season, which is seriously picking up pace. So the first challenge that you guys are facing, and this is not going to come as a surprise, is competition for funding. So right now, there's 1.8 million nonprofits in the US. And of this 1.8 million, 1.5 of them are active 501c3s. So that's a lot of competition out there. So this number has steadily increased at the rate of 1.4% during the past 20 years in the US alone. This does not include foreign-based charities. So this means our competition is increasing, and we're going to have to work harder to land those grants and gain the attention of our donors and encouraging them to invest their money in our cause. So for a lot of nonprofits out there, especially those of you who have budgets under $1 million, which is 60% of the sector, it can be really challenging to generate the same financial support from one year to the next. So if you're in startup phase or you have budgets, under $1 million, you know how challenging it can be from year to year. So what are the solutions? Well, in 2023, Americans gave $557.16 billion to charity. So it's not that the money isn't out there. This represents a growth of 1.9% over 2022. And I don't know if you know this, but 80% of that money came from people. So that's usually surprising to people when I tell them that statistic, that 80% of that kind of money came from people. Beyond this, we are in the middle of the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the United States. So by 2035, $69 trillion will have changed hands, going from one generation to the next. And these generations think differently about the philanthropist role, and it's just a different attitude now. So if you're not already focusing on your individual donor program, now is the time. The first thing I'd recommend is focusing on, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Focus first on donor retention. So there are people who have already raised your hands and said, I love what you guys are doing. I want to be part of the cause. They're already fans, they're already donors. Capture them and retain them. So we can lose up to 30% of our donors every year. So even if we can just stop the bleeding, we're going to do better financially than if we continue to lose donors. So focus first on retention. It's also a good idea to maximize your revenue from the existing donors. So are you asking them to up-level their giving every year? I went to, an undergrad institution where they didn't ask me to increase my gift until our 10-year anniversary of graduation. So it was our 10th reunion. And only then did they ask me to increase my gift. Now, if they'd asked me in year 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, I would have given more money. So when we don't ask people to give us more money, we're leaving money on the table because most people are willing to increase their contribution by at least 5 to 10%. So don't leave money on the table. Ask them to up level. The other thing to focus on is after retention and after up leveling, then you can focus on acquisition. So getting new donors. But the first thing you have to do is identify your ideal donor avatar. So look at your donor data, look at who's already giving to you, and focus on finding more of those folks. So for most of us, that's going to be women over the age of 50, right? That's who's kind of carrying philanthropy right now. And so, I mean, it's boomers, but it's also women over 50. So, think about where are women over 50 hanging out in our community, and then just start kind of trying to cultivate relationships with those groups. So it's also a really good idea to conduct an audit of your fundraising efforts to see which strategies are most effective, and then do more of that, right? Wash, rinse, repeat on your success. You're also going to look at your vision and mission statements to make sure they're relevant, contemporary, and compelling. Because if you have a really old mission statement, or it's really long, or it's really convoluted, people are going to lose interest. They're not going to be able to really connect with your mission and get it inspired by your mission. So, for example, I used to work at a community development corporation, and we had this really long mission statement, which no one could memorize. And it was really complicated because we talked about ourselves as a community catalyst. Well, what the heck does that mean? So I always remember saying, can we just say we build better neighborhoods one block at a time? Can we just change to that? So eventually we did. And people understood, oh, we're building a better neighborhood one block at a time, right? So we're taking an incremental approach. We're doing it on a small scale where it's more intimate about this community building. So anyway, look at your mission statement, make sure it's contemporary and aspirational. You're also going to want to look at your social media and communications for the same things. Is it relevant? Is it inspiring? Is it aspirational? Is it compelling? So you're competing in a super crowded, noisy field. So start thinking about what makes us unique. What makes us different than the other organization that may be doing a similar thing around the corner? So, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I didn't sleep very well last night, so it's showing up now, of course. So just remember, there's 1.5 million nonprofits out there, and you're competing for them in a very noisy, crowded field. So think about your market differentiators. What makes us different? What makes us unique? So, for example, I used to have a organization called Abby's House, and what I figured out very quickly is they're the largest providers of affordable housing for women and children. That's unique, right? They are the largest providers. They were also one of 2 homeless shelters in all of Central Mass that didn't require people to be on public assistance before they could get in. Again, market differentiators. So think about the ways that you're unique. Also think about, what do your donors want to hear? And if you don't know, it's time for a donor survey. And if you want a sample donor survey, just send me an email at sarah@sarahblang.com with donor survey in the subject matter, and we will get you a sample of different questions that we ask. But you definitely need to want to be responsive to what your donors want to hear. So if they want to hear more success stories, then guess what? Put out more success stories in your social media and your other communications. The second problem we are running into is donor fatigue. So especially on the other side of COVID, people are tired, right? So COVID took a lot out of us. And even though it's been a few years since we passed the pandemic, I think the fatigue is still lagging a little bit. So, we've counted on regular contributions from a particular set of donors for a while, and we're going to see fatigue setting in. And especially as key contributors reduce the amount of their donations or stop donating altogether. You don't want that to happen, right? So, donor fatigue can occur when people feel discouraged about a particular cause and worry that their contribution is not making a difference. So, the number one reason a donor is going to walk away is because they feel like they and their donation don't matter. In addition to this, organizations sometimes see declines due to conditions outside our controls, like the economy. And this is going to lead donors to make fewer or smaller contributions. So, what are some of the solutions? Well, there's a number of ways you can tackle donor fatigue. One is acknowledgement and gratitude. You can never say thank you enough. They say that you have to touch a donor 7 times during the course of a year, which with digital is so easy, right? I mean, that's an email a month, a social media post a month, and most of you guys are doing way more than that. Um, but how many times do you acknowledge them and their contribution? So the more we feed them gratitude and acknowledgement, the more connected they're going to feel. They're going to feel appreciated. And that leads to them sticking around and giving more to the cause. The other thing to think about is, are your social media posts and emails donor centric? In other words, do they position your donor as the hero? So obviously, you guys in the nonprofit world, staff are doing the work. You're doing the heavy lifting. And we need to make sure that our donors feel needed. So it's not the staff and the client, it's the staff and the client and the donor, right? So everyone's linking arms to support the client, right? So, yes, obviously staff are critical, but so are your donors. So you want to make sure you position them as the hero and literally call them the hero. Um, and that may leave a not really great taste in your mouth, but do it anyway because it works. Are you sharing impact stories and statistics? Again, donors need to know that their contribution is making a difference. So show them how, tell them how. So it's not just about the gratitude, but it's also about sharing the impact because that's why they're giving you the money. I can't do anything about homelessness. Not really. I mean, maybe I can give water and granola bars to people who are panhandling, or I could let a few people put up tents in my backyard, but that's not really making very many inroads, right? So if homelessness is breaking my heart, I'm going to give my money to organizations that are here to alleviate homelessness, right? So um, you're doing something on my behalf that's important to me, but I need to know that my dollars are making a difference. So show me how they're making a difference and tell me how they're making a difference. The other thing to think about is hosting a donor appreciation event where the main focus is not on fundraising, but instead is centered on applauding the support they have provided and highlighting the improvements in the community. One of the things I did with one organization, and this was just an ongoing thing at Abby's house, we had lunch with the ladies. It was the first Friday of every month. Donors could come in and literally lunch with the ladies. There was always a separate table where we had lunch. It was like lunch with the ladies table, and there was a sign on it. And so donors would come in, and the women at Abby's house obviously did not have to sit there. It was not mandatory. But some of them really actually wanted to say thank you to the donors and get to know them. And it was this beautiful, beautiful thing. And these relationships started to be created out of this lunch. So, for example, there was a knitting group that emerged because one of the donors came and she was an avid knitter. And the women around the lunch table were like, "Oh, can you teach us how to knit?" So she started coming in. I can't remember whether it was on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. I think it was weekly, to teach the women how to knit. It was awesome. Another woman who was a business owner started a start your own business group, right? So she met with a group of women who were interested in being entrepreneurs and talk to them about like how to start your own business and what the pitfalls were and what the challenges were and also what the upside of it was. So there was one woman who started to create her own, it was like a clown and balloon business. So she would like do birthday parties and stuff. And so it just was so great that these things would have never happened if we hadn't created this mechanism for donors to come in and get to know our women. So you could do a donor appreciation that includes your clients. I I did another donor event where it was an organization that helped women prepare for the workforce. So they would do things like wardrobe makeovers, haircuts, um, you know, teaching the women like how to carry themselves with confidence and be assertive. And um, anyway, we had an event, and like 6 of the women came, and you couldn't tell them from the people except that they had lanyards around their neck that said, "I'm a before and after, ask me." Right. And so you meet this woman and you'd see her lanyard that says, "I'm a before and after." And like there were pictures of them, but their before pictures were up, on the walls. And they were like, "Yeah, that was me." And people were like, "Really? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What a transformation." So it was just really cool. And the women were so happy to share their transformation with people. So you want to do it in a way that's super respectful, that feels comfortable for your clients. And, if you serve a population that isn't prone to that kind of thing. So like if you're serving kids or survivors of domestic violence who are in a shelter, probably not a great model, but you could still do a donor appreciation event which focuses on success stories and impact so they can see their dollars at work. So I've helped organize a bunch of those, and they don't have to be fancy. They don't have to be like super bougie. They can just be a nice reception where people can get to see the impacts, whether it's through a video or photographs or in-person appearances. So you just want to make sure that they have the opportunity to come up close and personal to see the difference they're making. And then, of course, you want to track them for maybe a major gift down the road. The third challenge that we're running into is limited resources. So many nonprofits operate what I think are ridiculously lean margins. And I don't approve of this. As somebody who's raised $100 million and gotten nonprofits to the place where their budget, I'm not a fan of being a lean, mean machine, because guess what? You're actually undermining your own effectiveness this way. So my older brother used to be in real estate, and he used to say, "Cost what the sign costs," right? One of the members of his team was like, "Well, we could just have fewer signs printed." And he's like, "Okay, so does that mean we don't put a sign out in front of every house?" And like, the sign costs what the sign costs. It's not a negotiable, right? So, when you operate at a ridiculously lean margin, what is it costing you? Well, I'm going to tell you what it's costing you: turnover and the loss of top talent, right? So the cost of replacing a lost staff member is 1.5 to 2 times that person's salary. You're talking about a lot of money. If you lose more than one staff person in a given year, that's a lot of money, because as they're exiting the organization and looking for a job, their productivity is going down. Then there may or may not be a gap between when they leave and the new person starts. And then there's the new person coming up to speed. All of that is costing you up to 2 times. Well, we just seem to have lost our connection. So I'm just going to keep going. So when we have trouble giving employees and volunteers the right training, tech, and tools, then that could lead to turnover. And then it's also going to cost you in terms of outcomes. So what I've done with a couple of my clients is looked at ways to provide the tools, tech, and training that their staff needs in order to improve outcomes, which in turn increases your fundraising. So for example, Jeremiah Zinn, which has been a client of mine for 10 years, we instituted electronic medical records, so online medical records for their clients. They're a substance abuse recovery facility. And they now have, their case managers now have 20% more time to spend with their clients. So if you're spending 20% more of your time with your clients, what do you think that's going to do for your outcomes? Well, it literally increased their graduation rate by 22%. So now they are always in the top 10 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts of publicly funded peer-to-peer social model programs because their graduation rate is now 52%, whereas the average in the Commonwealth is 33%. So guess what? They are now the shining star of the state. They're attracting more staff, better staff. All of their staff is now more than qualified for every position in their organization. Their longevity of their staff has increased significantly, and their outcomes are much better. So this is the thing, we keep believing we have to keep overhead low, and instead what we need to focus out is the outcomes. What outcomes are we having for our clients? And if those outcomes aren't what you want them to be, then you need to make the case to get the money to have the outcomes. Was electronic medical records cheap? Heck no. That was like a $10,000 investment. But guess what? Now, if you look at Jeremiah's in post EMR implementation, the case managers have way more time to spend with the guys. The guys are doing much better. The outcomes are much better. And that attracts more donors and funders. So this is the thing. When you don't have the tools, the tech, and the training that you need to give your staff, they can lead to a falling short of your fundraising goals, which perpetuates, let's say that 3 times fast, further reduction of resources, which leads to more turnover, fewer resources for tech, tools, and training, which leads to poorer outcomes, which leads to less funding. Do you see where I'm going here? So the sign costs what the sign costs, right? So I would rather see you make the case for more money than resign yourself to a depressingly low overhead margin, which is not helping anybody. So I want you to craft a realistic budget that takes into account a variety of expenses, including staffing, marketing, tools, tech, training. Those kinds of things need to be in your budget. It's important to look beyond individual donors and explore other tactics and strategies, including looking at government sources. That could be city, state, could be federal, looking at corporate and private foundation grants, charging annual or monthly membership fees if that makes sense for your organization. So for example, when I was at Oak Hill CDC, we started a membership program and it was $25. That was a suggested donation. People often gave more. So, and there were some people who gave less, which was fine. That was what they could do. So we had a membership program, and then members got access to special things that people didn't. So for example, we were given 25 summer camp slots to distribute in our community. Well, guess who got those slots? Members. So if it makes sense, excuse me, look at those kinds of programs. Also look for corporate sponsorships. Just because somebody doesn't have an in-house foundation doesn't mean they won't give you money. So I did a research project for a client. We pulled together the Worcester Book of Lists, which is produced by the Business Journal, and they're in lots of other cities. So it's literally a book of lists. Here are all the banks in your region. Here are all the companies in your region. Here are all the CEOs of those companies. Here are how much they are paid. So it was like such a good prospecting tool. Then I got a bunch of Chamber of Commerce membership lists, and we did a data dump into an Excel spreadsheet. Oh my gosh, took so much time to sift and sort through that data, but we just did it by company name. And we now have a Central Mass corporate directory of 4,000 different companies. So some of them are not going to make sense. Like your local auto body shop is probably not going to give you any money unless the owner is your brother-in-law or something like that. But we got quite a bit of money out of that list. So look at companies in your area. You could think about hosting a fundraising event, which, you know, those are the lowest return on your investment because of the upfront costs. So do them judiciously. And think about, you know, maybe you have meeting space you could rent out to other groups, or maybe you could co-locate another nonprofit inside of yours, depending on your space. So I really suggest conducting a fundraising audit to see which strategies are working best for you and then do more of that, right? Before you try something new. The fourth challenge we're facing is changing demographics. And so each generation experiences a different set of challenges as well as opportunities. And so, as the demographics of donors change over time, their ideals, motivations, and circumstances change as well. And we need to keep that in consideration and adapt as needed. Because if we don't keep up, we can be really faced with a challenge of maintaining donations, retaining donors, acquiring new donors. So right now we have two buckets, big major buckets of donors. So there's like Gen X boomers who are going to carry philanthropy through 2035, and a few World War II folks left, and the younger generations, right? So we have two major buckets of donors, and each requires a different approach. Yay, just what you need, more work, right? They have different technological expectations, and how they use their time and resources is very different. So, for instance, while the older generation is inclined to send handwritten checks in the mail, although boomers will jump online if you give them a URL or a QR code. They still like paper. Younger generations are going to expect to be able to make a donation online or via a mobile device. And especially the younger folks are looking for a mobile device option. So Gen X and older folks are ripe for major gifts and estate planning strategies. And many of them already have a donor advised funds, which are hard to find. But guess what? Donor surveys, you can find out if they have a DAF. And this group is looking to leave some sort of philanthropic legacy. So Gen X and above, more boomers than Gen X. Gen X can be a little challenging on this front, but the front end of Gen X is more like the boomers in terms of the way they engage in philanthropy. They're looking to leave a legacy. So take advantage of this transfer of wealth and their age. I am the first year of Gen X. So I've already made gifts in my will. I've left bequests. I've been very clear with my son what those are. I have a donor advised fund. It's parked down at the Greater Worcester Community Foundation. They're managing it for me. Thank God. Because I wouldn't want to have to deal with that. But anyway, so people who are like 50 plus are really looking at kind of this last stage of their life and what do I want my life to mean? So think about major gift and estate planning strategies with those folks. Younger donors have less time and less money. So we need to approach them differently, quickly telling our story and making our ask. They also have different expectations in terms of impact. This is the instant gratification crew. So give it to them. Maybe instead of like a formal thank you, they get a success story, right? So, bing, here's your success story. You help make this happen, or you're going to help more of this happen. Think about things like hero badges, right? So, that might sound cheesy, but I've actually done this with a client who trends younger on the donors, and they get different hero badges depending on the level of the donation they've made, or if they make multiple donations that leads to that badge, then they're issued a hero badge. It's kind of hilarious, but it works. They like it. And we use all the superhero language and all the superhero graphics. It's really fun. And it was started out as a huge experiment, but it's working really well. So one of the things I would suggest if you want to learn about engaging younger generations, I just had Dr. Dan Young on as a guest. So go rustle up that episode and listen to it because his specialty is millennials and giving. So the other thing is, in one of my upcoming shows, I'm going to be focusing on digital fundraising. So stay tuned for that one. The final challenge I'm going to address today is economic downturns, right? So we have lived through plenty of these. The housing market fell apart in 2008. We had to bail out the banks. Then COVID came, right? So it seems like every few years we have some kind of economic catastrophe that happens. So it could be a recession, it could be a downturn, it could be inflation. These all pose problems for us, and we need to prepare to weather a decline in donations. So people are less likely to give, and as a result, reaching fundraising goals can be challenging. So, between price increases and in uncertain marketplaces, when adjusted for inflation, today's donor dollars. Why do I set myself up like this? Donor dollars don't have the buying power they once did. So there's been a sharp decrease in the number of supporters who gave small contributions. Some of this is like just post pandemic adjustments. Some of this is a loss of first time donors. Remember, you can lose 30% of your donors annually, and you can lose 50% of the people who give you gift one and never make it to gift two, right? This is where retention is so important. But it's also a good reminder that every gift, large or small, matters. A lot of us are brainwashed to believe that only big gifts matter. But what I'm going to tell you is that 80% of people are carrying over $500 billion. So I haven't done the math, but I'm going to guess that's like 400 something billion, maybe high threes. But it's a lot of money, right, that people are giving. And there's only so many Bill Gates and Jeff Bezoses, right? Philanthropy is being carried by regular folks. You, me, the person around the corner, the person across town. We're the ones who are really carrying philanthropy. Obviously, it would be great to have a wealthy person or 3 or 6 in our database. But what I'm telling you is we often pay attention to that group of high-end donors at the expense of lower end givers who are much more likely to be loyal for the long run, provided we steward and cultivate them. So, for example, I do okay. I'm very philanthropically inclined. And as a single mom, the 4 years that you did not want me to not ask me to upgrade my donation was when I was giving every single penny that I earned to my son's college. Oh, you want more money? Oh, okay. Mom, I need drumsticks. I need music paper. I need toothpaste. It was a lot. And for those of you who have put children through college or are putting them through college, there are things that you never even think of when you're budgeting for college, but that you have to pay for. So during those 4 years was not the time to ask me to upgrade. Now, when I got an instant raise upon graduation, that was a good time to up level me. But just remember that every single gift that you get matters, and that yes, big gifts are great, but so are smaller gifts. All gifts are great, and we need to value them all. So during periods of economic uncertainty, I would argue that we're in one now, it's really important to focus on retention. So if you haven't already done so, I'd really encourage you to initiate a recurring gifts program, sometimes called monthly donors, encouraging your existing donors to sign up for a monthly contribution. So think about your gym membership. How many of us have signed up for a gym membership for X number of dollars a month? We don't go to the gym, but it keeps coming out of our account, right? We don't even think about it until suddenly we're like, oh, they're taking $38 out of my account every month and I never go to the gym, right? So this is the same thing with recurring donations. People kind of just set the car and drive and go. And it's a really great way for you to get recurring revenue. The other thing is people are more likely to give more money when they can do it over a period of months. So it's just more, well, it's less painful that way, I guess. So for example, when Boston University School of Social Work asked me to establish a prize fund, now I'd been giving every single year in increasing amounts since I had graduated, but this felt like a big leap for me. And so I was a little stunned. I was like, and my son was like 14 at the time. I was like, what? But then what they did, genius move, they broke it down into a monthly some. And I was like, oh, I can do that. So the overall number felt really, really big, but then they broke it down into bite-sized pieces. And I was like, oh, I will sign up for that. Yes. So just make sure that you're giving people the option to give every month, right? So the other thing to make sure you're doing is that you're moving people up the giving ladder. You know, I used the example earlier of how my undergraduate alma mater did not ask me to increase my donation for 10 years. That meant for 9 years, they were leaving money on the table. Now, could I have given more than $25 on my own volition? Yeah, but they didn't ask for it. So how do I know they need it? So move people up the giving ladder. So you want somebody to come in and make that initial donation. And then you want to make sure you get them to hang around for the second one, which is cultivation and stewardship. Then once they become a habitual donor, which means they've given to you at least 3 years, then it's time to move them up to a significant gift, right? So maybe they're giving you $50 a year. Maybe you're going to ask them to move up to 100. Then once they've been giving at that level for 3 or more years, you want to move them up to like a major gift. That could also be part of a capital campaign. Sometimes those are interchangeable. Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. Why am I having so much trouble with my words today? Anyway, you want to provide them with information about the difference their dollars are making and lavish them with gratitude as you're asking them to climb the ladder. And so once they've given a major or a capital gift, then you can get some of them to hit the mother lode and leave you a gift in their will or part of their estate. So you want to make sure that you're encouraging as many people as possible to go as high on the ladder as possible, because you might be shocked that you have donors like me who might go, oh my God, $10,000? Are you on crack? But then they're like, oh, well, that's only this much for 5 years. And I was like, oh, I can do that. Right. So don't assume that people are going to say no to a big ask. You just have to make sure you break it down into those bite-sized pieces, right? Because otherwise you're going to asking them to eat an elephant. So move them up the giving ladder, provide them with that information that they're desiring about how they're making a difference, and make sure you're lavishing them with gratitude, because you can never say thank you too much, right? I was raised by a Southerner, so I am well-versed in the art of thanking people. So those are the top 5 challenges that are being faced right now with some solutions. I hope those tips were helpful, and thanks for joining me today. If you're not already doing so, please follow me on social media, where I drop some of the fundraising tips and hacks I use to raise over $100 million. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and Jesse's going to drop those links in the chat. And if you've got any questions or you want that sample donor survey, you can hit me up at Sarah, SARAH, at sarahblang.com. And Jesse can put those in the chat as well. And that's it for today. We're going to be back on September 11th. It's going to be a little bit different. So it's going to be a pre-recorded session with 2 of the leaders from the Woo Fridge, which is a mutual aid feeding program here in Worcester, Massachusetts. And one of them is a school teacher, so she is not available during the day. So we did a pre-recorded session with them, but it's a really interesting interview with them. And I was really interested to learn how this group of community-minded individuals is getting the city's residents involved in feeding our hungry neighbors. So it's really uplifting episode. I was telling a friend of mine about it, and now she's starting, she lives in Down East Maine, and she's going to start what she's calling the Mill Fridge, because she lives in Millbridge. So it's not going to be the Mill Fridge. She's going to get one up and running in her community, which makes me very excited. Anyway, thanks for joining me today. And if you've got any questions, let me know, because I'm here to help you in any way I can. So I will see you again with our next episode. Bye. Tuning in. I'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. Got topics you want me to cover? Organizations you want me to showcase? Let me know. Also, I'm here to help you revolutionize philanthropy at your nonprofit. If you want to talk about what that looks like, drop me an email.